Hello. How do you feel about mess? I hate mess, but unfortunately, to myself, I'm one of the most messy people that I know. I annoy myself every day, and I try really, really hard. We all try really, really hard, but I get to the end of the every day, I look around our flat, and it is just chaos. Having a toddler does add to that little challenge for us. But how do you feel about mess? The second law of thermodynamics, bit of a geeky start, states that in a closed system, entropy, so the measure of disorder or chaos, always increases over time. Is that true in our world? This would argue that it is. And so everyday experiences like a messy room, a falling deck of cards, the heat from your coffee spreading out through the room, they're all examples of systems moving towards a greater state of chaos. And I think, maybe my messiness is just the way things are. Maybe I shouldn't mind so much about my laundry basket and my kitchen and all the things that are everywhere. Maybe it's just the way things are naturally moving to be. But then I look further afield and that doesn't encourage me so much anymore. I look at relationships that get messier over time. I look at health as disease brings more chaos to our bodies as we age. I look at our roads, our infrastructures, as they get ruined over time. I see it in our politics, in our leaders as they take on roles, and then more chaos and more conflict seems to increase as they lead. Disharmony seems to be everywhere, and it seems not to be slowing down, and I'm no longer comforted. I'm sad. If this is the case of the world, that there's a natural tendency towards chaos, more disorder, more mess over time, is that all we have to hope for? Is that all we have to settle for? Well, in this next beatitude, Jesus calls us to a higher hope. He tells us that the good life belongs to the peacemakers. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God. What is peace? What comes into your mind as you think of that word? Is it beaches? Is it the woods? Is it candles? Is it spas? Is it the grass between a sports pitch? Grass with the sports pitch under your toes? Is it time alone? Time with others? Absence of worry? Absence of hurry or pressure? What is it that comes to mind for you? Peace is generally understood as a state of tranquility, freedom from conflict or disturbance. It's a presence of harmony, encompassing both the absence of violence and the presence of justice. In the Bible, the Hebrew term for peace is shalom. And the Bible Project have done an excellent little video on what shalom is. And so I want us to watch a few minutes of it now.
The word peace is common in most languages. People can talk about peace treaties or times of peace. It means the absence of war. And in the Bible, the word peace can refer to the absence of conflict, but it also points to the presence of something better in its place. In the Old Testament, the Hebrew word for peace is shalom. And in the New Testament, the Greek word is eirene. The most basic meaning of shalom is complete or whole. The word can refer to a stone that has a perfect, whole shape with no cracks. It can also refer to a completed stone wall that has no gaps and no missing bricks. Shalom refers to something that's complex with lots of pieces that's in a state of completeness, wholeness. It's like Job, who says his tents are in a state of shalom because he counted his flock and no animals are missing. This is why shalom can refer to a person's well-being. Like when David visited his brothers on the battlefield, he asked about their shalom. The core idea is that life is complex, full of moving parts and relationships and situations, and when any of these is out of alignment or missing, your shalom breaks down. Life is no longer whole, it needs to be restored. In fact, that's the basic meaning of shalom when you use it as a verb. To bring shalom literally means to make complete or restore. So Solomon brings shalom to the unfinished temple when he completes it. Or if your animal accidentally damages your neighbor's field, you shalom them by giving them a complete repayment for their loss. You take what's missing and you restore it to wholeness. The same goes for human relationships. In the book of Proverbs, to reconcile and heal a broken relationship is to bring shalom. And when rival kingdoms make shalom in the Bible, also means they start working together for each other's benefit. This state of shalom is what Israel's kings were supposed to cultivate, and it rarely happened. So the prophet Isaiah, he looked forward to a future king, a prince of shalom. And his reign would bring shalom with no end. A time when God would make a covenant of shalom with his people and make right all wrongs and heal all that's been broken.
Shalom is an incredible concept, and I think it's one we all long for, even if we don't know that we do, where what is missing is taken and it is restored to wholeness. And so a peacemaker is somebody who does that, who joins Jesus in taking what is missing and restoring it to wholeness. And so as we think about peace, I want us to think about three things: the peace that Jesus brings, peace that drives us outwards, and investing in peace that will last forever. So firstly, Jesus brings peace. Jesus is born into a time of massive conflict. He takes his first breaths, he cries in his mama's arms, and all around him, his people, the Israelites, they're living in an occupied, militarized zone. The Romans have invaded Israel, and they say they want to bring peace. They call it Pax Romana. But their definition of peace is something very different. It's not an absence of war, but instead they say they want to see a time when all their opponents have been beaten down and they've lost the ability to resist them. What a terrifying definition of peace. And so the Jews are living amongst these Roman soldiers. They're living amongst tax collectors, their own people who are collecting taxes for the benefit of Rome. And the Jewish hate the Romans for this invasion. They hate the control that they have over them, and they are awaiting their Messiah, their rescuer, the one who will deliver them peace. And they think that that will be the one who will destroy Rome. And you can kind of understand that, can't you? You can kind of understand, surely we just take away the thing that is evil. And we can take away the people in power who are determining our daily realities, because we don't think they have our best interest in mind. We don't agree with them and how they do it. And humans all over the world have varying views on political parties and world leaders, and believe that in some way, if they change, if they're stripped of power, maybe a life of greater peace might be possible. And we've been praying for that this morning. We've been praying for peace to come. And there's so many situations and countries where we just cry out, "How long, Lord? How long?" But what is the right way of peace being achieved? How can peace and shalom ever be restored in a world that is so broken? How will Jesus bring peace to his people in all the trials and difficulties they face? Well, into this fractious landscape, Jesus arrives. And it's interesting, there's 4 groups of Jewish people that are present that have their own theories of how peace will be made. And I think that will really help us in thinking through our own assumptions and our own thoughts and how we think peace will come about. Firstly, we've got the Sadducees. These guys are the elite. They're the top dogs. They're super wealthy, they're super religious, and they're willing to collude with Rome in order to maintain their status, their money, and their power. They basically like where they're at and they want to stay there. It's not that they're pleased that Rome are in charge, but they're like, if this is our reality and these are the guys with power, let's partner with them so we can maintain what we've got. To them, achieving peace is, let's make peace with those negotiating in power, with power, and see what we can get out of it. The Pharisees, they love God's law. They're very committed to helping people live in the ways that God has directed. They're very influential leaders. They're less wealthy and perhaps less politically powerful than the Sadducees. And they believe that peace will come if everyone just obeys the law and obeys the Torah. As long as we do that and teach people to do that strictly enough, peace will come. But they look down on anyone who doesn't. And then there's a third group, a group called the Essene community. They probably lived by the Dead Sea, and they're dedicated to a very strict, very legalistic way of life. They want to see their community cleansed and purified, but their way of dealing with what they see as major problems within the Jewish community is just to get away from everyone else. They remove themselves and just pray for God to come and restore and cleanse everyone. Then they think that peace will come. And so they're out there saying, oh, yes, it's pretty peaceful out here. And you can kind of see that, especially if you're someone who avoids conflict. It's easy to think, if I just remove myself from conflict, if I just avoid it, then I'll experience peace. If we could just behave in a way that keeps the peace, not adding to any chaos or any argument, surely we're being peaceful people, right? But if we go back to the definition of a peacemaker, which is seeing what's missing and restoring it to wholeness, how can you be a peacemaker if you're far away? How can you see and how can you do? I imagine that they think they had the good life. They're the good guys. They've removed themselves from the bad guys. But imagine how difficult peacemaking is if that's the way you think of life. How will you ever make progress if you're not willing to be present with others? And then lastly, quite differently, the last group are the zealots. The zealots are driven by a strong nationalistic and religious fervour, and they believe that the God of Israel should rule over everyone, which is great, but they view Roman rule as illegitimate, and their response to that is they want to kill, to harm, to hurt any Roman that they find. They violently attack and kill Roman officials and collaborators. For them, peace was to come by force. They're opposed to tax collectors who collude with the Romans. They're opposed to the Sadducees and the high priests. They're opposed to any Pharisee who's not teaching right. They've got a lot of enemies. I'm not sure that they're living a very peaceful life. What are you like in conflict? How do you think peace will come about? Do you avoid it? Do you stick your head in the sand? Are you a hothead, diving in, wanting to lead with force? Do you partner with people in power just so that things can remain good for you, but maybe not for other people? Do you welcome or alienate people who think about things differently to you? And so into this landscape, Jesus arrives. And he teaches that blessed are the peacemakers, or the good life belongs to the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God. And what's difficult is that he's going to offend all four groups of people. None of them are going to be very happy with his way of peace. We use the phrase the incarnation to describe Jesus, God's Son, putting on flesh and coming into our world as a human. And the incarnation is really helpful for thinking through what is making a way of peace. The incarnation teaches us that avoidance cannot be the way of Jesus because he's the one who comes. Incarnation teaches us that anger and war are not the way of peace because Jesus teaches it's right to even love your enemies. Jesus warns against serving masters of money and status, and so the Sadducees can't have got it right either. And the Pharisees, well, we know that Jesus doesn't always get on with it. Jesus says instead that the way to peace, the way to shalom, is through him, and to go through him, you'll be counted as a child of God. He teaches that in some way we all contribute to the chaos and disorder that we see in the world through our lack of loving God and loving people. And so as a result, what we need most, as Amanda was so helpfully sharing, is peace between God and with others. And the surprising way that the Prince of Peace brings peace is not through avoidance or violence, but through generous mercy, generous self-sacrificial love. The way we bring peace is always going to cost something because we see that it costs Jesus. Jesus dies on the cross so that, as the message puts it, all the broken and dislocated pieces of the universe, people and things, animals and atoms, get properly fixed and fit together in vibrant harmonies, all because of his death, his blood that poured down from the cross. It's beautiful, isn't it? Puts everything back together. And so what Jesus achieves is not primarily about earthly, military, political peace. It's about peace between humans and their maker, that in turn leads to peace between humans as we grow in looking like our God. In more traditional cultures, the eldest son, especially, would be a mediator. If there was a feud between feuding family members, he would go out and mediate peace between the members. Jesus, as the Son, is the peacemaker. He has come to members of the family to extend peace between us and God. And on the cross, he achieves it. He achieves all that is needed for peace between man and God, earth and heaven. Who else could reconcile it to the Father? Only the Son. And then when we are at peace with God, he calls us his children. John 1:12 says, to all who received him, who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. When Sophia was first born, my daughter, so many people, including a lot of lovely you, said, my gosh, she looks like Dan. And she did. They had identical hair. It was really, really weird. I was the one that carried her. I was the one that, got her out. But everyone around me was saying, she looks like her dad. And now people say, oh yeah, I can see a bit of you. And I'm like, look at the nose. The nose is all me. Children look like their parents, don't they? And because he is the one who brings peace, Jesus says there is a behavior that will identify you as the children of God. There is a behavior that will make you look like me. And that behavior is bringing peace to the world and to those around you. God's children have the character of their Father. What he loves, they love. What he pursues, they pursue. He loves and pursues peace. And so should we. And so secondly, peace drives us outwards. We are to extend peace to other people. But to extend peace, we must first be at peace ourselves. And so my first question is, are you at peace with God? Have you accepted his forgiveness and love into your life? Have you called him Lord and King and Saviour and friend? Do you meet with him every day? To delight in him, to worship him, to love him, and to receive what he has for you? That's the first step. Do not miss it. It's the vital one. And then secondly, we have to extend it. Do you know what happens when you don't have enough money in your bank account to pay for something? When there aren't enough funds in your account, the payment bounces, leading to all kinds of problems. You can't cover the payment. You have the kind of consequences that brings. Similarly, you can't pour water from an empty cup. You cannot give what you do not have. You cannot extend peace if you're not filled with peace yourselves. And I think this can be a real challenge for us, can't it? We can spend 5 minutes in the world that we're in and be robbed of peace. We live in a world where hurry and suffering and pain and distress and conflict can cause us to forget that there is a day coming where Jesus will return and restore everything. That there is a day coming where all worry, all fear, all pain, all distress will be gone because Jesus will have arrived and everything sad will become untrue. The Lord of Lords and the Prince of Peace will usher in true peace and true prosperity forever. And that day is coming for those that know Jesus. And that is why when we fix our eyes on that, we can receive what the Bible calls peace that knows no understanding. Because it is not present, dependent on circumstance. And therefore we are able to pray for peace. And instead of just asking for a nice feeling for us or for other people, or even just asking for a sense of calm, we're asking God for miracles of that future world to be seen today, if he chooses to give it. We're asking for tanks to turn around, for rockets to stop, for wholeness to be restored between arguing spouses, for provision of bills and debt, for calm at the school gates. We're asking God for a peace of heart to be our way of life as we walk with him. Because if we do not focus on the world that is to come, we will focus on what we see around us. We'll know we're not at peace in some way, because in some way we'll be afraid. And fear in the Bible is the opposite of love. If you pay close attention to your life, you'll see that any unloving act you've ever done is attached in some way to fear. In some way, you'll have been afraid. Medieval theologian Thomas Aquinas says that fear is a contracting impulse of the soul. It turns us inward and allows us to only focus on ourselves. Survival is the one and only objective. He compares that to a fearful person. He compares a fearful person to a medieval city under siege. We retreat into the city. We barricade ourselves. No one is allowed in or out. I think we can do that a lot sometimes, can't we? We look at the state of our world and we think, I'm afraid. And so I'm going to look in. I'm not going to look out. I'm just going to try and protect myself. But love is an expanding impulse. It's open to pain. It's open even to suffering, not for the benefit of people around them. Author Jacques Philippe writes, only a peaceful heart can truly love. Therefore, we must try our best to preserve a peace of heart, struggling against worry, because love resides only in peace. And so he says, be careful to always keep the holy peace of heart. It's something that's particularly difficult for those of us who are prone to anxiety. All of us experience anxiety in one way or another, some of us to a diagnosed level. Sometimes we need medication and therapy to help with this. Sometimes different life circumstances cause more anxiety than others. I've definitely felt more anxious after becoming a mum than I did before. But Jesus' offer of peace is for all of us, despite circumstances or proneness. Just some of us need a bit more help receiving it. When we're at peace, we're not in a hurry. We're able to be emotionally regulated. We're able to be present to whatever is in front of us, the good or the bad. And not only do we feel better, more importantly, we're able to look out. And so cultivating a peace of heart is one of the most important things we must do as we follow Jesus into a world that is in so need of his restoration. How do we do this? It's not really about doing. It's about receiving. Author and pastor John Mark Comer writes, a good question for this is how do we posture our lives to receive as much of the peace of God as we possibly can? Prayer is a natural way to do this, but not in a way that is kind of an upload of lists and needs and requirements, but just a prayer of peace. To sit in God's presence for at least a few moments a day. Allow his love to fill you. Allow his spirit of peace to minister peace to you. And so one of our most important jobs every day as people that follow Jesus is to sit and receive peace from him. We cannot give what we do not have. So make time to receive peace from the Lord. Why does a good life belong to the peacemaker? Because excitingly, as a man called Saint Seraphim once wrote, acquire inner peace and 1,000 souls around you will be saved. Why? Because peace-filled people look outwards and invest in peace-filled things that will last forever. As we are able to extend God's peace to others, we offer an alternate reality to the world that is always moving towards chaos. Instead, we offer a glimpse of the kingdom that is to come. I was reading recently about Princess Kate's work on the Shaping Us campaign. It's got the aim of increasing public understanding of how important the first 5 years of a child's life is. What we experience in the early years will shape the developing brain, which is why positive physical, emotional, and cognitive development during this time period is so crucial, as the foundations that are laid in these years show up in how your brain responds to things for the rest of your life. When we choose to invest our time in peacemaking, bringing harmony to a chaotic world, one day, when all chaos is burnt away and only harmony remains, what we have done to bring harmony now will show up later, and it will be present forever. And so peacemaking is totally worth it. Every offering of it will last forever into the new creation. And so God is summoning his followers, his children, to get out into the world, to get into the arenas of conflict and do the hard, important work of not just keeping peace, but creating it, making it, and extending it. And what does that look like? It looks like being on the lookout, being in the lookout of things that are not in a state of shalom around you. Biblically, to know is to do. And Jesus tells a story about this. He tells a story of a Jewish man that is beaten up on the side of the road. 3 people pass him by. 2 religious men see him, and they cross over the other side of the road and avoid. The 3rd man to pass is a Samaritan, an enemy of the Jews. And he sees this man, and he moves towards him. He bandages him up. He lifts him onto his horse. He takes him to an inn. He pays for his care. He pays for his stay there. The Samaritan extends peace when he sees the need at a great cost to himself. Jesus comes into our gritty mess to bring peace at a huge cost to himself. He's distinct but different, and he's engaged in the midst of gritty reality. And therefore, as we go and follow Jesus into the world, we can expect to know his power and his peace, and we can expect to risk and to suffer. But we must lift our heads, see, notice, and do. And as we go into the world, we will not be able to bump into things that need restoring. And I think that's true inside and out of the church. We need peacemaking in the church. We need to be doing it with each other. As we bump up against conflict with those that we're in church family with, we need to be thinking, okay, if I can't just overlook this offense, if this is ruining our relationship, I need to move forward towards this person with vulnerability, honesty, and openness, and explain why this has hurt me and seek reconciliation. We need to be doing it with each other as we seek to serve a city in need, as we pray and plan in the ministry groups that we're involved in. And we need to be doing it wherever we go. I think this picture is really helpful for showing us where the church is. It's everywhere. It's everywhere that we go. It's everywhere that Jesus' people are present. Alongside working for church, I work for a charity called Innovista, and we develop leaders wherever it's difficult to be a Christian. And in a country we work in Central Asia, there's a lot of corruption, and including in the police force. They're often not a force for good, and they often abuse women. And in that country, there is a Christian female magistrate administrator. And for years, she wondered, is my work worthwhile? Does God care about it? Does he care more about what happens here at church? And yet she realized her role as a peacemaker, and that her work and her faith in Christ are not separate to one another, but instead her work matters to God and is part of his mission in the place that she works. And this has increased her strength and her sense of calling to be part of a system that is just instead of corrupt, and part of a system that is compassionate and cares for prisoners and protects women. Knowing that her work, what she does every day, is part of God's mission, has given her the strength and courage to continue. And so as we come to a close, I want to ask you, what is your arena? What is the arena of conflict and chaos that God has put you in and wants you to extend peace in? Perhaps I can offer a few examples. I wonder if you resonate with any of them. As you step in between the bully and the one being bullied, as you advocate, you extend peace. As you seek to serve the lonely, the people society have forgotten about, and chat or offer compassion or offer a meal or teach them, love them in some way, despite society's thoughts about them, you extend peace. As you give time, money, skills in ways that contribute to others being restored, healed, or given dignity to, you will extend peace. When you offer forgiveness to a spouse or a friend that has badly hurt you in a way that allows the relationship to continue, you extend peace. As you rock your baby at night time again and again and again, battling sleep deprivation, you extend peace. As you move towards a family member that no one else in your family has spoken to in years and offer kindness and love, you are being a peacemaker. As you get involved in the complex area of politics and lobby and ask for godly change in our country and others, you are extending peace. What if we all did that? What if we all longed for and actively created peace for those around us, no matter the cost that it brought us? What a world we would see around us. And one day, we will see it fully, forever.